Cellular respiration involves the breakdown of sugar in the presence of oxygen to give rise to carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And it's this energy that the mitochondria releases that the cell uses. Every mitochondria undergoes this actual reaction. And what happens here is this sugar ends up coming from the food we eat. So if I'm looking at cells in the human body, this oxygen comes in through the air we actually breathe in. As a result of carbon dioxide, so this reaction produces these outcomes. Carbon dioxide is toxic to us, and it makes its way back to the lungs and we exhale it. Water is produced as a product as well in this reaction, but it's the actual energy here that we actually use for our day-to-day lives. So sugar molecules and oxygen molecules find their way into the mitochondria, to the cytoplasm of the cell, and then into the mitochondria in order for this full reaction to occur. Now, if we look at this equation, and then we actually look at the equation for photosynthesis, we're going to see that there's some very big similarities. Photosynthesis reaction involves taking carbon dioxide in the presence of water. Okay? Those two, when you combine those two together in the presence of sunlight, that's going to give rise to sugar molecules and oxygen. So if you have a look at these two equations, what do you actually notice? The beginning ingredients of cellular respiration are identical to the end ingredients of photosynthesis. And the beginning ingredients of photosynthesis, okay, so these beginning ingredients are equal to the end result of cellular respiration. Now, sunlight is a form of radiant energy, and the energy produced in cellular respiration is a form of chemical energy. But these equations are relatively similar. And this is what's very interesting in plants, is during the daytime, plants will undergo photosynthesis, and in the absence of sunlight, they will actually take the sugars that they produced and the oxygen that's in the air, and they will actually carry out cellular respiration in order to get the energy, to break down the energy that they just worked so hard to actually, make in photosynthesis. So these two chemical reactions, do not always have to happen in the same organism. We do not have access to this. This happens in the actual chlorophyll molecules of each chloroplast, whereas this reaction up here happens in the actual mitochondrial membrane of each mitochondria. Plant cells have both of these organelles, whereas animal cells only have mitochondria. So this is the relationship between cellular respiration and photosynthesis. And if you think about it, this actually makes sense. Because if we remember our carbon cycle from last year, CO2 in the air gets taken up by trees that perform photosynthesis. Those trees release O2 into the air, which we take up okay, and animals, okay, we then produce CO2 that goes back into the air. This is a very simplified version of the carbon cycle, but this is essentially, one of also the key indicators here for the movement of carbon across living things. Because carbon is a big part of sugar, and carbon is also found in CO2. Carbon is a big part of CO2, and it's also found in sugars. So when we look at this actual image, the water here comes into the actual tree from the ground, the CO2 from the air, and we know that the sun here is providing energy that's going to actually break apart these molecules to form sugar that the tree is then going to consume in cellular respiration. So this is the relationship between cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Okay? These two equations, these two word equations, show you that it's the same molecules and substances, more or less, with the exception of one form of energy versus another, that are being used in both equations. But they are not being used in the same way. In one instance, some molecules are used to produce other molecules, and in the other instance, the products of the previous reaction are used to make the molecules that are used in the previous reaction.